well-being and supporting mental health in your workplace. We're really excited about today's session, and today's session will be recorded for utilizing as a resource in the future. If we move on to the next slide, today's webinar has been made possible through the Canadian Agriculture Partnership Funding, which is a collaboration between OFA, agcareers.com, careersandfood.com, as well as the other various partners that are listed here. Through this collaboration, we've been able to launch the Feeding Your Future campaign. This program delivers 4 essential areas. If we take a quick look at the next slide, it shows a way to support employers as well as job seekers to assist them to navigate the employment market. The 4 areas are the concierge service for the job seekers as well as employers that have been going very well, as well as 9 virtual career fairs and 10 webinars. Each webinar includes a presentation by an industry professional designed to keep you up to date on the changing trends and topics that are developing in the food and agriculture industry as it affects employment. So you will have the opportunity today to submit questions during the presentation by clicking on the question and answer feature on the right of your screen, or perhaps the bottom of your screen, depending how you're set up. Those questions will be answered at the end. So without further ado, we'll move on, and I'm very happy to welcome our guest speaker today on supporting mental health in the workplace, Lesley Kelly. So welcome, Lesley. Just to give a bit of a background on Lesley, Lesley actively farms with her family in Watrous, Saskatchewan. Lesley is the head and heart behind the popular High Heels and Canola Fields blog that has attracted thousands from around the world, where she dispels myths about agriculture and brings consumers and farmers together. Lesley's goal in being involved in agriculture beyond the farm, from blogging, podcasting, and vlogging, is to build a community and bring people together, creating conversations, collaborate, and identify solutions that help both industry and consumers. Lesley has been an active leader in advocating for mental health in agriculture. She's been part of the national Bell Let's Talk campaign and co-founded the Do More Agriculture Foundation, whose mission is to break barriers and support all producers in taking care of their mental health and well-being. She was recognized by the Regina YWCA with the Women of Distinction Award for this work. When Lesley isn't in the field, you can see her running to hockey, to the rink with her boys, taking pictures, going on a run on country roads, or learning how to cook for the harvest crew, as well as traveling with her husband. We welcome Lesley today and are so very thankful you were able to join us today. So I'll turn it over to you, Lesley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored and grateful to be here with you today to speak on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is mental health. Like Catherine said, I'm Lesley Kelly. I'm a farmer. We are in the midst of harvest right now, just getting lentils off. So moving on to wheat. So it's a very exciting time at the farm right now. But before I get started into my presentation, talking about mental health and how we can make a positive impact on each other, my first question for you is to think of someone that you might have seen recently, or someone that you might not have talked to in a long time, but the last time that you were in contact with them, you know, in your gut, you had a sense that something was off. They were outside of their normal. Keep this person in your thoughts as I go through my presentation. Here are some the ways that you can connect with me through social media or through email. If you need to chat afterwards or looking for resources or any way that I can help, you can get in touch with me at, through those variety of channels. So I am a co-founder for Do More Ag. It is something that is very important to me, and we started the foundation as a not-for-profit a couple years ago. And our goal was, or is, to champion the mental well-being of all of our Canadian farmers, where we inspire and encourage and support them to take care of their mental health. And we focus on 3 pillars within the organization. The first one is awareness. The more we know about mental health, the better. So what we do is we try to bring awareness to our community about what mental health is, what mental illness is, how to take care of yourself, how to take care of each other. And we do this through, speaking events like this, attending agriculture shows, being active on social media, working with our partners, and so much more. The second pillar that we focus on is community, building community around us. We try to support and facilitate open conversations, whether that's at the kitchen table, at the boardroom table, in your office, at the farm. And then we do that also through having a central hub of resources. So on our website, you can go to do more, and you can find a list of resources based on your province, where you're located, and you can find professional support in ways that you need it. Because the biggest thing that we found is there are support out there, there are resources, but they're just incredibly hard to find. So through our research, we're trying to make it a central hub. And the last thing that we're focusing on, and the most important, is resources. Bring resources to agriculture and develop resources. And we're doing that through online and in-person workshops. We developed a 4-hour specific, tailored to agriculture, to our producers, to those in the industry, because our industry needs are unique. So that 4-hour workshop is something that we are offering. And the last one is the Community Fund. We've done this over 2 years, and that's in partnership with FCC. And that is where we are bringing at zero cost mental health training programs to our communities across Canada. So that is through mental health first aid and then our workshop. And we're proud to say that we have had over 650 people attend this training. So trying to increase capacity and bring resources to agriculture. So today I'm going to talk about what mental health is, and then share a little bit about my story, my family story when it comes to mental health and the challenges that we've been through and the things that we've learned through that. And then the last part is that how each of us can make a positive impact on ourselves and those around us and take care of our mental health. So before we dive into what mental health is in my story, it's very important that we talk about exactly what mental health and mental well-being is. So I have a few questions, true and false. So the first question is mental health and mental illness, are they the same thing? True or false? And mental health and mental illness, they are not the same thing. However, in society, in everyday language, we do use mental health, these terms, and mental illness synonymously, but they do in fact mean different things and are different things. So mental health, according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes their full potential, can cope with normal everyday stressors of life, can work productively, and is able to contribute to their community. On the flip side, mental illness refers to a wide range of mental health conditions and disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. And some of these illnesses are, the first one is a mood disorder, such as depression and bipolar, and even suicide. And these are illnesses that affect your mood and emotions where they're not under control. And if left untreated, can have big impacts and consequences to your finances, your work, family, relationships, and so much more. The next one are anxiety disorders. So that's generalized anxiety disorder, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, and PTSD. And these are characterized as someone having a lot of self-doubt and being vulnerable to fear, having a lot of fear of the unknown and of the future. And then the next one is substance-related disorders, so alcohol, drugs, and then the last one is psychotic disorders. So the next question is, having stress is not a mental illness, true or false? And that is false. However, when we do talk about stress, someone when they're sharing how, they're feeling stressed, they're going through a lot of stress, they could in fact be talking about, having or being depressed, having depression, being anxious, living with anxiety. So it's important to know then what it is that they're going through and ask them more questions, because stress, it's less stigmatized than mental health. So someone that is reaching out, they might use the term stress. But having stress does not necessarily mean you have a mental illness. However, if you don't give your body a chance and your mind a chance to recover and heal, that's where a lot of stress can lead into mental health issues. And I use this image as, stress is part of our normal day life. We go into fight or flight. It's when our body goes through some stressful situations where adrenaline is released into our body, our heart rate increases, our blood sugar increases, and we have peak performance. When you go through the green and then the yellow, stress helps us, get things done. However, when you're in a state of high yellow, orange, or even red, and you don't give your body, your mind, some time to recover, recharge, take care of yourself through professional help, self-care, that's where we can have issues with our physical health and then our mental health. Next question is, mental health is a choice. You can choose to have it or not have it. True or false? And that is false. So mental health isn't a choice. You can't choose to have it one day and then not have it the next day. Mental health is part of who you are. You're part of your makeup, and it's just like physical health. It's part of how you are healthy and stay healthy. You can have a mental illness and have good mental health. This one's hard. True or false? And for this one, it is false. You can have a mental illness and still have really good mental health. But in terms of how we stigmatize mental health, or mental illness, when we think of mental illness, we think of someone, being in dire need, emotional, high emotions, irritability. There's so many other things that come to mind when we think of mental illness. But just like my husband, who is living with anxiety, he has really good mental health. He has to take a really good care of it, but is in really good mental health, but is still living with anxiety. So now I'm going to dive into where we are when it comes to mental health in agriculture. What is the landscape? And we've been fortunate to have great information over the last couple of years, and we look to our colleagues at the University of Guelph. So this speaks to some farmer research, and they found out that farmers, so 45% of farmers were classified as having high stress. And I know some of us might not be working or are farmers, but might be servicing farmers, working with farmers. So this is just something to note as to what the landscape and the everyday life of what a farmer might be going through. So 45% of respondents were classified as having high stress, and this can fluctuate. I know the past couple of years during harvest or seeding, where we've had some adverse climate, this number can be higher. 35% of respondents meet the definition for depression. And almost 60% of farmers met the definition for having anxiety, and this would include my husband. And the most startling stat that I found in this research is that 40% of farmers would feel uneasy about seeking professional help because of what people might think. That stigma that comes with mental health really puts us back. It inhibits somebody from raising their hand and saying, hey, I need help and I don't know what to do or where to go. So this prevents us from getting the help that our industry really needs. We don't have stats on farmer suicides, but we looked to our friends in the States, and they found that farmers are 2 to 5 times more likely to die by suicide, which is a really hard number to know. It's really unsettling. So that's why I'm here speaking about mental health and am a mental health advocate, because I really want to change those numbers and bring those resources and start this conversation of mental health in agriculture, because our farmers and our industry really need it. So I speak up for a few reasons. And the first is my family, my boys. I hope that one day that if they want to farm, that they will be farmers. but it's not if they go through hard times, it's when they go through hard times. So I want them to have the resources and the support that my husband and I really needed when we were going through hard times. And then my husband, he is my rock, my most favorite person in the world, and he's helped me through some really hard times, and I've helped him through some of his hard times. And then the other reason is all of us in our industry, or the people of our industry, are our greatest assets. And we know that a lot in our industry are going through some really, really hard times and are hurting. So I'm up here trying to change those numbers, change those stats, and help bring this conversation to the forefront. So a little bit about me and my family. So I farm at Watrous, Saskatchewan. We have about a 7,000 acre grain farm, and I farm with my mom and my dad, my brother and my husband. And I share this picture because this is my amazing family. And what we've learned is at a time where we didn't know much about mental health, it was hard for us. My family went through some really hard times, but by learning more about mental health, talking about mental health, learning how we can support each other through the farm, it's really helped our farm and our family come closer together. So my husband is living with anxiety. My brother, unfortunately, came upon a tragic accident a couple of years ago and is living with post-traumatic stress disorder and also living with anxiety. My sister, my younger sister, has an undiagnosed mental illness. And then my dad is also battling cancer. And we know cancer as a physical disease, but it also has some mental health challenges. And through that, has had some battles with anxiety. So everyone in my family has been touched by a mental illness or a mental health challenge at one point in our life. And we found that through learning about it, how it's really, really helped us. So a couple years ago, my husband and I, we shared a live video through social media because at a time where Matt was facing huge amounts of anxiety, panic attacks, did we learn a lot? And we thought, you know, this conversation isn't happening on social media or at kitchen tables or at the boardroom table. So we thought, how can we really help bring this to light? And what we did was we shared our story. And we wouldn't have done that maybe 5 or 10 years ago because of that stigma, but we thought that, you know, we weren't the only ones, and trying to help our industry through the things that we've learned through this conversation. So we did this live video, and our goal was to normalize the conversation, show that we are an everyday couple that has their peaks and their valleys, and that it does get better. And we had no idea the reception that we would get. And after that video, the video has been viewed about 100,000 times across the world. We've had conversations with people both in and outside of agriculture. And that just made us realize that, yes, people had been wanting to have this conversation, didn't know where to go, were looking for that help and that hope. And that really started the conversations of then creating Do More and bringing that help to agriculture. So in that video, I shared that I had postpartum depression after our second child, Copeland, was born. He's 5 right now, so this is about 4.5, 5 years ago. And I didn't know what postpartum was until I found myself crying uncontrollably in our master bath, and Matt came in and really helped because I knew I felt off, but I really didn't know what I was going through until Matt came in and really helped get all of my feelings, all of my emotions out. And it was a very, very, very hard time for me. And I really needed that support from him at that time. And then Matt in the video, he shared the stresses of farming and how his anxiety really peaked after we moved back from Alberta. We moved back home to Saskatchewan, but we made the short-term sacrifice to live in Regina, and then he would commute to the farm at Watrous, which is about 2 hours away. And it was so then I could have my career, but also the farm wasn't in a financial position to take on 3 families. So he made that short-term sacrifice. That short-term sacrifice turned into about 8 years of him commuting. And then the pressures of having a young family, being away from his family, and then the farm, you know, he's the son-in-law coming into my family, trying to figure out family dynamics, how to communicate. And then we were hit with rain. And it was hard for us. We lost about 1,000 acres due to flooding. So we were under some financial hard times. And then Matt, he built a couple businesses because of it. So he had all these pressures. He stopped sleeping, he stopped eating, and it really took a toll. So he found himself having a panic attack late one night in the camper, because that's where he stayed during the busy time. And then panic attacks started happening in the cab of the tractor, cab of the combine. And that was when we said, we put up our hands and said, well, we need to do things differently on our farm and within our family. And that's where we started to bring in resources and help, and then start to talk about mental health and what it means to support each other and him through this really, really hard time. He felt that he couldn't talk about what was going on because he felt less than. He felt that he wasn't a good enough farmer because of the ways he was feeling, and he felt he was less of a dad because, you know, he wasn't at home. So those really, for me, helped me learn about getting into someone else's shoes and really understanding the thoughts and the feelings that are going through when, you know, asking for help and reaching out, which can be really, really hard, but also really, really courageous. So I'm going to share the 5 things that myself and my family learned through conversations with mental health, because we learned that the more we know about mental health, the more we talk about mental health, you really can help someone. You can really save a life. And we all are here to help each other, help our industry, and start to break down those barriers and that silence. So the first thing I've learned about mental health is that it's different for all of us. Mental health is not a one-size-fits-all approach. What affected and impacted Matt was very different than what affected and impacted me. And what I needed, my self-care, was very different than what he did. So we learned that mental health is different for all of us, and you have to treat it as such. So I've been part of the Bell Let's Talk campaign for a couple years, and I had the opportunity of going out to Montreal to be part of a campaign, a video shoot. And after we were done shooting one evening, I sat down beside this amazing woman. So she is someone who has fought for our country. She's a veteran. She fought over in Afghanistan, and we started talking about our stories, and she shared with me her amazing heroic story. And then she looked at me and she said, well, Lesley, what is your story? And I thought for a minute, and I said, well, I was just a mom who was overwhelmed and sleep deprived and crying upstairs in the bathroom. And this is what she told me that really changed my outlook on mental health.
I deployed to Afghanistan for a 7.5-month tour of duty, and I was having nightmares, trouble sleeping, difficulty engaging people. So finally I went and saw a doctor and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress injury and a major depressive disorder and an anxiety disorder. When I first came public with my injury, I had a lot of people come up to me and they would say, yeah, I struggled with mental health injuries, or someone I know struggles. And then they would say, oh, but it's nothing like what you went through. And you kind of just really have to take the step back and realize that mental health is not a competition. People drown in oceans, and people drown in pools, and people drown in bathtubs. And everyone just has to stop worrying about how much water someone's drowning in and just focus on the fact that someone's drowning. And whether or not it's someone in society or themselves, they have to worry a lot less about what it is they're drowning in and just focus on the fact that they need to be able to breathe again.
So after I said, I'm just a mom that had postpartum, and she looked at me, and that's what she said. She said, Lesley, people drown in oceans, people drown in pools, people drown in bathtubs. Have to stop focusing on what it is that they're drowning in and help them breathe again. And that really changed my perspective, because before I always looked at what it was, and then it's the competition. And now it doesn't matter that what someone is going through is real. It might be different, but what they're feeling is real. What they're going through is real. And they are looking for that help and being able to breathe again. I don't. I can't advance it's not working for me. There we go. Thank you. So for me, knowing when someone can't breathe again, that's recognizing the warning signs. So signs and the symptoms of someone going through a mental health challenge or is facing a mental illness. So what I look for is when their emotions, their behaviors, their feelings are intense. You know, they have the high highs and the low lows. When it's long lasting, I know the medical field says long lasting is 2 weeks or longer. And then when it starts to negatively affect their relationships, you know, their job duties, other surroundings, their life, that's where you can start to take note of someone having a mental health challenge. I always like to say my biggest tip is, you know, you're normal, and you know those around you, your friends, your families, the people that you work with, you know they're normal. So if they're outside of their normal, for those periods, intensity, 2 weeks or longer starts to affect things that they do, things like who they are, that's where you can start to take note and start to have those conversations. So here are some other warning signs that you can look for, and it varies depending on the mental illness or the mental health challenge. But here are some tips. So when you start to see people withdrawing from activities, maybe their social situations, you know, if they've always have gone to the hockey rink and all of a sudden they stop showing up. They have impulsive behaviors. Maybe they're irritable, very emotional. They stop eating, they stop sleeping, or maybe it's vice versa. They're sleeping too much, or they're eating out of character. Overwhelming anger, worthlessness, sadness, showing no interest in the things that they love. They might say, I feel numb. Extreme worry or anxiety, you know, that intense worry of future events. And it's always that fear too that prevents them from doing things or making that step forward. And then also to take note of the increased use in substances. So after you see someone drowning, they're not able to breathe, those warning signs, they're outside of their normal, what it is that you can do is you can start to talk to them about their mental health and what they're going through. And I know these conversations are really hard. It's one of the biggest questions that I get is, how do you talk to someone that's going through a hard time? How do I bring it up? I'm afraid to, you know, there's always the afraid of, I don't know the answers. I don't want to upset them more. But the biggest piece of advice I can share is have these conversations, because they can be life-saving. And if you're coming through it, coming at it in a way of great intentions, being a friend, someone who can support, it can save a life. So what I can tell you is to start the conversation is say what you see. Say the things that you're seeing in their behaviors, what's going on around them, and start that conversation. It can be awkward, but I like to say there's so many things in life that are awkward, like our, you know, first dates, getting braces. So embrace this as just one of those other life things that are so great to be there for each other. And these conversations are also hard. And they're uncomfortable. And if you bring up the subject, ask them this question, and they start to get emotional or upset, that's okay too, because these are emotional conversations and they're hard conversations. So what I would like to say is then just ease up, and you've started the conversation, you've noticed, and they know that too, and then they'll come to you when they're able to, or when they're able to open up. So say what you see. And here are some examples of what I mean by that. So some questions that to help open the conversation is, you know, you've seemed really down lately. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? I've noticed you've been coming to work late over the last few days. Is everything okay? I've been so busy at work lately. I'd really like to catch up. Can we go out for lunch? How are you doing? You know, how are you really doing? We always like to, you know, it's common courtesy to say to someone, you know, hey, how are you? But just by putting that really in, can it show that you see them, that you hear them, that you're there to listen? So now after you've opened the conversation up, you've asked them the questions about how they're doing, the next thing that you can do to help bring this conversation forward is to show that you care. And showing that you care, you can do that through kindness, compassion, and empathy. And I would say when my husband was going through some really hard times, my family members going through hard times, I likely wasn't as empathetic as I could have been. But now going through my own struggles, can I really see and appreciate walking in someone else's shoes, you know, their thoughts and their feelings and what they're going through, because it can be hard. And, you know, this mental health conversation and changing that stigma can be really hard and challenging. And there was times where, you know, we had an overwhelming positive response to that video, but we did hear some negative feedback. And for us, it did hurt. Matt and I were called crazy and insane. He was called a pretend farmer. And some feedback from our peers, that they said that if you can't handle the stress of farming, you know, to get out, you can't call yourself a farmer. And we had to take a step back and know that that's that stigma. That is what prevents so many of us to know what mental health is and help support each other. And what we can do, what Kelly said is, you know, rather than change it from a competition or have that competition, we can change that conversation to one of care and support, and that will really make a difference in our industry. So you can show you care just in your everyday language. And, you know, I've said these things, and these things can prevent someone from talking, from getting the help. These things that we've all said it too. So we don't have time for this, you know, suck it up, man up. You know, what are you crying for? It's not that bad. It could be worse. Well, you look fine, you know, get over it. You're just looking for attention. They're just lazy. And put your head down and work through it. We've said that, I've said that, my families have said that, but now we've changed the language on our farm within our family to one of support. And here are some examples of how these few words, these short phrases, can really make a huge difference to someone going through a hard time. So such questions and statements like, how are you? You're not alone. You matter. You're worth it. I hear you. I'm right there. I'm listening. I have time for you. You know, it's okay. We'll be okay. And how can I help? Life-changing statements right there. So the next thing that you can do after you've noticed the warning signs of someone going through a hard time, you've opened up the conversation, you've asked the questions, you're showing that you care through your body language, being there to listen. The next thing that you can do is listen. So some active listening, and this can be a really hard skill during, you know, having when these conversations can be hard, but listening can lift that weight of the world off of their shoulders. And here are some tips of how to be a listener in these conversations. So strike a balance between listening, asking questions, and sharing your experiences. You know, we all have a story, and you might have gone through some hard times too. So sharing the things that you've learned or what you've gone through can make a world of difference. Be curious, ask lots of questions, you know, rephrase, summarize, ask for clarity. You know, is this what you mean? Or that must be hard. Tell me more. Is this what you're saying? Help them name their feelings. You know, it sounds like you feel. You don't need to have or know the answers or give advice. I'm not a mental health professional, but sometimes it's just asking those questions and poking them, you know, asking questions, summarizing can really help. Help that person feel hope and that they're not alone. You know, you're not alone. I've been through this. We'll get there. Help is here. And that awkward silence is okay. I actually embrace that awkward silence because during that silence, it allows them time to keep talking, and it helps you, you know, think of other things that you can say or collect your thoughts. And we all know that when there's silence, that people want to keep talking. So that just helps keep them talking and keep the conversation going. I know that listening can be life-saving. And I had this as an example or a story where we first started talking about mental health in front of or at agriculture events a couple years ago. And it was one of our first panels, and it was at Farm Tech in Edmonton, right when we launched Do More. And we were in a room of about 400 chairs. And I was hoping, you know, if 10 or 12 farmers come, it'll be so great and so worth it. And when they opened the doors to start that panel discussion, the farmers, they ran in. Every chair in in that place was full, and there was even people sitting in the aisles, and they were standing at the back. And as we were talking about mental health, and I was sharing my family story and what we learned, there was a farmer who was directly across from me at the back. He was standing, and he had his hat down, and he was about, I would say, 65, 70 years old, and he cried that whole entire time. He cried for the hour, and my heart was breaking, and because he was going through a hard time, and you could feel it, you could sense it, you could hear it. And he didn't have to say anything. He just listened to the conversation. And afterwards, when everyone had left, he had come up to us, the panel members, and he said, I'd like to thank you. And we thought, well, why? And he said, you just saved my life. I'm going to go home and talk to my wife. He didn't have to tell us his story. He just was in the room listening, and listening can also help create conversations, give someone hope that they need. And I know that listening can be life-saving in that instance. So the last thing, after we've had these discussions with mental health or helping someone through a hard time, the next thing that I learned is how important it is to take care of you and the self-care. I know self-care, it has that stigma. And when we first started about self-care on the farm, my husband and my brother, they instantly said, Lesley, please don't make us do bubble baths and yoga. And I thought, well, hey, that's what, I love to do. That's what is part of my self-care routine. But then it was an aha moment for me. And it's exactly like mental health. Mental health is different for all of us. And so is self-care and how we take care of each other, where something might drain someone, but then for me, it might fill up my cup. Here is an example of how self-care is very different for all of us.
Hi everybody, it's Paul. A lot of people ask me after a long day of voiceover or writing or doing all those creative things that I do, how do I relax? Well, like many other Americans, I come home and I pet my dog. You see, petting your dog is one of the most relaxing things you can possibly do. It releases a hormone called oxytocin, which reduces stress. Also, it lowers your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure. Plus, people who pet their dogs are 5 times more likely to live longer than people who just have cats.
So I'd love to show that one, because maybe my dog reacts a little bit differently, but for him, that is part of his self-care. And it's really great to see how people use different things as their self-care routine. For us on the farm, it was really hard to, take breaks and even put self-care as a priority, putting you as a priority. But what we've learned is that making yourself a priority is number one, to put yourself on your to-do list. And for self-care, it's giving you the people and the places and the experiences that fill up your cup. So we talk about it on our farm as filling up your slip tank. How is your slip tank doing? And it's giving you the opportunity and the time and the energy to do things that fill up your cup, that bring you passion and bring you joy. And for us, it's, taking breaks to recover and recharge. Right now, we're in the midst of harvest. And if we get a rainy day, or we also we shut down early when everyone is feeling tired, because then there's also a safety component. And it's just allowing, granting us the grace and the time to know that this is important. The other part too, it's nourishing our social life. I'm a very extroverted person, and it's taking the time to be with friends and families, or your family, and doing those things, because talking to people, being around people can mean a huge part or be a huge thing for our mental health. And that then comes with peer support, having that network, a supportive network to help you, celebrate your successes, but also be there for you during those hard times, those people to talk to, people that you can go to and turn to. For the other thing for us on our farm is we take care of ourselves on the physical front, staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, knowing that sleep is very, very important. Matt feels his anxiety, his triggers come on when he doesn't get enough sleep. And even rest. Rest might be 5 minutes on the tractor or 5 minutes in the truck, just taking a drive, but it's giving your body and your mind that chance just to take a few minutes and rest. And that can either be done too with breathing exercises. We do breathing exercises on the cabs of the tractors and in the combines and in the office. And then for us too, it's knowing that it is okay to have good days. It is okay to have bad days. It is okay to feel so many different things and to talk about those feelings, because if you're going through it, someone else might be going through it. So there's a short exercise that we do on our farm, busy times and non-busy times, is when we have our tailgate check-ins, we do our barometer readings, our stress levels. And it goes back to that chart of the green, yellow, orange, and red. So we always like to state our stress levels. And so then if I know that my husband and my brother's stress level is at an 8, for a few days, that's when we can start to take note and have those conversations of what it is that they're going through, what is it that they're feeling, and how we can help to bring that from an 8 to a 4. So it's a short example, but it also is the opportunity that it gives us to talk about mental health on the farm, to talk about stress, to talk about all that it is that we're going through. We also have meetings before harvest and before seeding, the busy times, just to sit down away from the office. We're disconnected, and we talk about each other's worlds, because our worlds are also very different. My brother's world is very different than my husband and I's, and my parents, who are going through retirement. So talking about worlds can also be huge to help those conversations with mental health. And then the last part is seeking professional help. My family and I, and also our farm, have sought professional help, and it's helped us in our communication. It's helped us really, go from a 10 to a 2, give us the tools and the tips to help us through those really, really hard times. And that's where Do More can come in. And we have a list of those professional supports, those resources that you can go to if you're looking for extra help. So the last thing that I want to share is our calls to action. And we have 3 calls to action. And doing these 3 little things, we know they can make a big impact, a huge impact on those around us. So the first one is to talk more about mental health at the kitchen table, mental health at, within your offices, at the boardroom table, because the more we talk about it, the less mental health is stigmatized, and we break that silence and break that stigma. The second is to ask more to yourself about how you're feeling, what you're going through, and then ask those around you how they are feeling, how they were really doing. Because asking those questions can help open those conversations up, bring that light to someone's darkness, and help them go through a hard time, or help them when they're going through a hard time. And then the last one is listen more. Listen more to yourself, listen more to others. And you don't have to be a mental health expert. You just have to, at times, be that voice or that ear that someone needs to take that weight of the world off of their shoulders. So these 3 small things that can mean big impacts to our industry and our farmers and those around us. So here are some other resources. So I mentioned Do More a few times, but here are some numbers that you can call or text. The mental health first aid, my family and I, we took it a couple years ago. For us, I wish that I would have taken it years ago, 2 decades ago, because it really is life skills. It's a training that it's over 2 days, and it provides you tools and tips of when to or the things to recognize when someone's going through a mental health challenge, and then what to do in a crisis situation. And then the last one too I've taken, and that's the ASSIST, the suicide intervention skills training, another worthwhile training to help bring awareness and to help someone in crisis. And the other part, the biggest resource, is each other, you and those around you. No one knows what another person in our industry goes through than those in our industry. So keep talking, keep asking, keep listening. And then my last question, based on the first question at the beginning of my presentation was to think of someone that was going through a hard time, or in your gut, something might have been off. And then my question would be to please go and talk to them, ask them, and listen to them, because that can mean a world of difference if they are going through a hard time. So this is where you can reach us at Do More if you'd like to chat with me afterwards. I thank you so much for the opportunity to bring this conversation into the light and to talk about mental health and help our industry and bring resources to those who need it. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Lesley. That was lots of good tidbits and information. And if you're okay with it, I'll maybe ask you some of the questions that have come out through your presentation. Oh, that's great. I think one of the questions that came at the very beginning was, why do you think mental health is such a stigma or is so stigmatized in our agriculture and food industry?
Yeah, I think it also goes back to how it's stigmatized in society. You know, when thinking back to even growing up, how it was depicted on movies and how the media talks about it. It's very, very negative. So these are things that are systemic when it comes to mental health and mental illness. So I think how it's stigmatized, it has happened, decades and decades ago. But also then within our industry, it's just the culture that has helped us be resilient. You know, our industry is amazing. We are strong and resilient and have to go through. We face hard times and things that are outside of our control. So that has been a strength, but also then when it's an overplayed strength, it can be a weakness, where then when we go through hard times, it might be really, really hard for us to say, hey, I'm struggling and I need help. So a few factors that play into that stigma.
So definitely a combination, not necessarily industry specific at all. And I think one of the slides just that you had shared around show you care, and some of that verbiage of, you know, we don't have time for this, or suck it up. I can hear that in obviously conversations that I've had even, and the fact that you're, you know, suggesting and giving us the tools of the, you know, you are not alone, you matter, just changing that dialogue. Obviously you can see how it can have such an impact. So those were great suggestions, which kind of leads me into my next question that was asked. What has been your biggest challenge in raising awareness for mental health in our community?
Oh, the biggest challenge. I would say it is that stigma. We were at the beginning of even talking about mental health. We had, some comments come back with the notion of there is a time and place to talk about mental health, and this is not the time or and the place. Sit down, stay hushed. And so that in itself was a huge hurdle of even getting that conversation out in the limelight. For us, my husband and I didn't share it, but when we did that video, we actually sat down and before said, okay, so what could happen? There's a lot of amazing things that could happen. What are some of the big things that might be negative? And some of the things that we talked about are, will this affect our insurance? What are our friends and neighbors going to think? Because our friends and our family, some of our family didn't even know. And then the biggest thing that we thought of that really, it gave us chills. And the question was, will people go to our landlords, tell them that we're crazy, and then our rented land would go?
Right.
And that for us that made us go, that is that stigma. That's why people don't talk about it. It's the fear of not even what people might think of me, but it's the fear of this could impact my business. And for us, that was probably the biggest challenge of even just starting the conversation.
Right. Well, thank you for starting the conversation, because I think it's it's that old video that all you need is one follower, right, to make an impact. And that first follower is so important. And with you and your husband speaking up, it probably does give the courage for others to even recognize and have the strength to acknowledge that perhaps there are things that they want to change. And you talking about your brother and your husband and doing the barometer check. That was such a great example of how, you take 2 minutes, you seek to understand where the mental state is of others that are around you so that you can actually have an impact and help each other. So that was such another great example of how by you speaking out, it's made a difference and will continue to make a difference. So I think that leads into the other question. Just the audience is looking for just a little more about, you mentioned about keeping an eye out for someone that you may think is struggling, and can you suggest other ways to bring the subject up with them in a caring way without possibly offending them, because there is a bit of that stigma. So obviously you gave some good examples of questions, but can you just dig into that a little further?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. So for me, I've learned that people, they need to feel seen and they need to feel heard. So putting down your phone, going to them at eye level, opening yourself up rather than do closed arms, opening yourself up, and and it could depend on the timing and the situation that you're around or that you're in, but it is, hey, I'm seeing these things, or hey, I've noticed, I would love to talk to you more. How are you doing? How I'm here if you need someone. So for me, it depends on the person and the situation, but if you make yourself available, show that you are available, look them in the eye, be sincere, show that empathy, and do those simple statements of, hey, it could also be anytime you need, I'm listening. Or, hey, bud, want to go for beers? Or you want to take a drive? What Derek and Matt they have a code, and it's let's go for a drive. So it might not even be a question. It could just let someone know, hey, I'm here. We can go for a drive. You might not even want to talk about what you're going through, but it's the sense that someone is there. That can be big too.
You are not alone. Someone is here. We're willing to listen. And I think the other thing that you mentioned around that was awkward silence is okay, because that's sometimes part of the process. So
in that drive, there might be, Derek and Matt have even mentioned how there's minutes of silence. But that is for someone to allow them the opportunity to collect their thoughts, you to collect their thoughts, and let them lead the conversation.
Oh, that's great. So let's talk about this from organization. Obviously, I work in agribusiness. I'm also a farmer. My husband and I, we turkey farm. So these things I think can apply at all different aspects, no matter where you contribute along the value chain. So what advice would you give to organizations, big or small, farmers, big or small, to take specific action to let their employees know that they support mental health?
I would say it first starts with the culture of the organization, to have a culture of, communication, of openness, of support, having resources available. So if people might not feel comfortable talking to, their leader or a colleague, that they all also are providing opportunities to talk to someone else through, an EPA, employee assistance program. But then, it all starts with showing, having policies, procedures that allow employees the opportunity to talk, to have the opportunity, to sit down as a team or with their leader, have, even those daily or weekly check-ins with your leader, your boss, someone that you report to, and your team. So just fostering communication, having a supportive culture can really be a huge thing.
So that's something we've obviously growing up with a group of family farms that surround you, and obviously, you know, lots of people in the agriculture industry, but then we also are connected with those that are in the food processing side of things. And like I said, agribusiness, whether it be here in Ontario or there in Saskatchewan or, you know, over in England. I think these things are similar. So one thing I wondered, with everything being so remote, with COVID specifically, and kind of the side effects of that, of everybody having to be locked down, supporting your team, there's new challenges with that. So how would you suggest that you can tell if a coworker is struggling when we are in such a remote setting right now? Any suggestions there?
Yeah, that is a good question. I would even say, for me, being super extroverted, not having the same social atmospheres, has my mental health at times been really, really challenged. So for me, it's looking for different ways of how you can stay connected, talk to each other, and then you also have to do different ways. If you're someone like me who needs people, you have to do different things that fill your cup. So for me, yeah, it's really, really hard to know when someone's going through a hard time when you don't see them. But you also can sense in not just what they say, but how they say it. So if you're talking to someone over the phone, and you know, in your gut says, something's off, they're short, maybe they're outside of that normal, they're short, they might, you know, be very negative, maybe they're bubbly, that's when you can start to have those conversations, whether it's on the phone or then looking for an opportunity to be face to face to gather more information based on what your gut is saying. You know, and also it's hard to have these conversations by text, but sometimes people feel comfortable to start the conversation because, you know, it gives them some privacy. Also, so you have to respect people's way that they want to communicate. And that's another way that you can start the conversation, is through text. Hey, how are you doing? And if they start to share more, then hey, can we talk via phone? Can I come over? Want to go for coffee? Want to go for a walk? There's different ways that you can then keep the conversation going, but then be more connected.
That's interesting. Absolutely. More connected. One of the side effects of that obviously is more time. So that's something with Ag Careers and Careers in Food. We're working on our 2020 and 2021 agriculture and food HR review. So looking at best practices, what companies and farms are doing from the sense of their employees. And the one thing that we're starting to see a trend is the stress on leadership, of the amount of time that it's taking because of our remote situation to be able to connect with their staff, make sure they understand, make sure that obviously things are going well with them from a supportive side, whether it be their family, but then that other side of, we have business that needs to obviously proceed. So is there any other tips that you would give managers, leaders in business on a farm in that respect of how to balance their time and keep their mental health in a good light?
Oh, that is hard, because we are in unprecedented times that is changing everything of how we do things. So for me, if you're finding that a lot of your time is being shifted then to checking in and following up and communicating one-on-one, and then what are ways then of how you can get extra help in other areas, or letting your team know, hey, this is taking extra time, and to grant your leader the grace of, if someone also then needs more time that you might not get to them on that date. So it's just letting others know of your world too, because as a leader, you are in a different world than your employees, and you have different stresses. So letting them know that can also help someone be empathetic to what they're going through, and then looking for ways of help in new light. For me, when COVID hit and then we were in seeding, I wasn't able to be on the farm because I was also at do more than with mental health to help everyone in the industry with their mental health. We were really busy, and then homeschooling, and then it was
Right.
it was a safety component with the kids being at the farm too. So then we lost an employee. So we then had to look for alternative ways of getting a retired farmer to come to the farm. And then what can I then do at the farm to help support, or how my role changed too. So doing things very, very differently and trying to figure out, it changes day by day.
Right, right. So adapting, changing kind of the approach. And I think going back to what you said earlier about really trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand, and therefore then asking to either help them, or perhaps you need the help. So that was a really good tip too. And just looking at your 5 ways to break barriers, I thought that was a great way to summarize kind of how people can put real live tactics in place to be able to help each other. So with that, this is the final question. Just going back, obviously you mentioned about some of the training and options that you have through the Do More program. And can you just reiterate some of that? Because I think people were interested and perhaps didn't catch all of what was available from a training perspective within the organization.
Mm-hmm. So at Do More, we saw a need of how people wanted to have training programs, but they weren't specific to agriculture. So what we did is we developed a 4-hour workshop, and it's developed, it can be in person or through a webinar, and it goes through, talks about the different illnesses, depression, anxiety, and then it focuses on topics of what support looks like, how to have these conversations, what signs and symptoms to look for, and then that, boundaries, also creating as a leader, creating boundaries for you and what you're going through. And then also self-care and how to take care of yourself. So that is available. And then the other things that are available is the mental health first aid training. Just like physical first aid, this is the mental health component. And that's a 2-day course. Life-changing life skills, how to talk about mental health and help someone when they are in crisis and going through a hard time. And then the other one that I've taken is the assist, and that's more on the suicide intervention, how to help someone in dire need when they're facing crisis, the things to say, the things to look for, what to do, and how to help someone into recovery. So
That's
training
great.
aspects. Yeah. And then there's also information and, some blog posts, Do More too, some general tips, and then resources.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and speaking to this really important topic, and obviously part of our life on a day-to-day by hourly basis that is so important to recognize and have an understanding of how we can help each other. So thanks, Lesley. We appreciate that you're a very busy person. So the fact that you've been able to contribute and help us with this Feeding Your Future webinar, we just really appreciate you coming today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about mental health. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great. So with that, I think we'll flip on and just do a little bit of a wrap up here. There are some upcoming events through obviously the Feed Your Future campaign. Here are the links to the toolkits, whether you're an employer or a job seeker, with lots of information. It then outlines, if we go to the next slide, some of the upcoming virtual career fairs. We do have a career fair tomorrow in the northern region of Ontario from 2 to 5, as well as the other events in Western and Eastern in September. We had a very successful event yesterday across the province with over 260 attendees, and I think there was 42 employers highlighting all the wonderful careers that are available in agriculture and the food value chain. So if you are interested, these are events that do not have a cost, because it is supported, thankfully, through our Canadian Agriculture Partnership funding. And we'll just show you on the next slide here the members that are a part of that. And just to, before I get to that, obviously there's upcoming webinars that on October 20th, September 10th, and October 6th, whether it be for the job seeker or employer. So check those out. You can register for any one of them, and they will be available, as we said, on the website as recordings. So Once again, thank you very much for participating today, and we're so happy to have you as part of the Feed Your Future campaign. And please reach out to us in any one of these ways. If you have questions, you need help with posting a job, with finding a job, or obviously with any of our virtual career fairs or webinars. Thank you so much. Okay.